Apparently, there is a pay-per-view next weekend. You would never know by watching these shows, but there is indeed an event next weekend called TLC. I know new matches were announced on this show, but beyond that, WWE has done next to nothing to get you excited for this pay-per-view. Why anyone would be looking forward to this show, I have no idea. And it's a real shame, too, because I talked about the last time I did a SmackDown review, 2 weeks ago. I had said how I had brought up how the build to Survivor Series was better than, in recent years. They've done a better job of building to Survivor Series than they did Crown Jewel, or really any other installment of Survivor Series in recent years. But I was also alluding to Crown Jewel, Hell in the Cell, and the fucking mess that was. Remember they only advertised like 3 matches for that pay-per-view in advance, and they only added like 5 matches the night of the show? It sounds like we're in for a similar situation at TLC. Now, again, they announced new matches on this episode of SmackDown last night, but still, that's honestly embarrassing. This is Graham Giason Matthews breaking down SmackDown for Friday, December 6, 2019. Hope you guys are doing well. Our first SmackDown review here on the channel in about 2 weeks. Couldn't do one last week. Didn't watch the show until late Friday night. I was instead watching The Irishman, which was a great movie, by the way. And then I just had no time on Saturday to review the show. I'm honestly still backed up from stuff that I was doing a week ago, just because Thanksgiving week was so busy, and this week was so busy too. And it's only going to get busier with Christmas quickly approaching, and there's a lot of stuff going on. Next weekend, I'm not sure if I'll do a SmackDown review next weekend, as we have the final, the Final Battle pay-per-view on Friday night. So I'm not even watching SmackDown next week, at least live. Probably Saturday morning. And then the Into the Fire pay-per-view Saturday night at 6:05 Eastern Time. And then the TLC pay-per-view on Sunday night. So I probably will not be doing a SmackDown review for the foreseeable future outside of this one, because next week is that. And then the week after that, I think I'll be away to go see Star Wars, actually, with a friend that Friday night instead of SmackDown. So I'm not watching SmackDown until at least early Saturday morning. So I will probably not be watching or / reviewing the show, at least here in audio form on the channel for the next number of weeks, and at least until 2020, maybe. I'm not even sure. At least until the final episode of the year. And by that point, it might be too late, so we'll see. But anyway, this is my review of the SmackDown for December 6, 2019. As I said earlier, overall, a very flat show. A very flat show. Did not watch it live. I was actually with Alexis and her family seeing a football game, actually. Not a Patriots game, but we were at Gillette Stadium watching her cousin play. They do like a Super Bowl-like thing at Gillette Stadium for like the teams that play the Massachusetts high school teams, which is kind of cool. I observed it, and I was doing reporting on those games about 3 years ago. So it was cool to watch. It was cool to be back in the stadium and watch the games this time as opposed to a press box, in the audience itself. But point being, we didn't watch the show until like on our way home. So I did watch it last night on my phone on the car ride home, which was about 2 hours. So it actually worked out quite perfectly. But it wasn't a show I was itching to go out of my way to see, just because it was not a memorable show whatsoever. A lot like last week, this was a very, I can't even say disappointing, just a very nothing show. It was a nothing show. Now, I know last week we had some returns. We had, Sheamus come back, kind of, in like a backstage segment. Same thing here. We saw him again here on this show, and it was cool to see Sheamus, but, he cannot make up for this steaming pile of shit that is SmackDown right now on Fox. And you would think the show would improve since the show moved to Fox 2 months ago, but it really hasn't. Outside of a few shows during Survivor Series season, SmackDown is as dull as it has ever been. Maybe not as bad as it was during the Jinder Mahal WWE Champion era a couple years ago, rather. But it comes close. It comes close. I honestly think SmackDown was better before they moved to Fox. Maybe not by much, but in the fall, August, July, even September, I thought the show was at least watchable. Solid, if nothing else. The shows now are completely nothing. None of the feuds are really doing it for me. It's a lot of the same shit. Just a very boring show. I honestly almost fell asleep watching the show by the end. Alexis and I were watching it on my phone in the back of the car on the way home, and she almost fell asleep. It was nearing midnight when we watched the show. How could you stay awake watching Roman Reigns versus Dolph Ziggler? You cannot honestly tell me that you were sitting on the edge of your seat watching that match. Oh my God, I can't wait to see who wins. Like, no shit Roman was going to win. But even as a match, it wasn't even all that great. It was decent. but it wasn't a great match. Honestly, I can sit here and tell you nothing on this show is great by any means. There is nothing on this show right now, not even one feud, one character, aside from maybe The Fiend. The Wyatt stuff is cool, but aside from that, though, maybe I'll give that, the just due it deserves. But aside from that, there is nothing on SmackDown right now that piques my interest. If anyone tells me, hey, I'm not watching SmackDown tonight, or I haven't watched SmackDown in a month, I know RJ's told me that a couple of times, I don't blame him at all. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, dude, you got to watch the show. It's a must-see show this week. It really hasn't been. It hasn't been in a while. Aside from that NXT Invasion episode, and even the Go Home show I thought was pretty good, but aside from that, SmackDown has been, like I said, a steaming pile of shit. And not in 2019, but really just since they moved to Fox. And I'll talk all about it in an article for Bleacher Report next week. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, we'll get started with my review of the show here. And this will probably go quickly because I really don't have a lot to say about the show. I mean, it was a show is really what this was. I could sum this up in a 10-second video and say SmackDown was a show this week and then wrap it up, but I feel like that wouldn't be fair. We opened up the night with an episode of Miz TV. Now, again, the big cliffhanger coming into this episode was what happened to Daniel Bryan. We saw him at the end of last week's SmackDown, seemingly getting his hair ripped out by Bray Wyatt after Bryan was dragged into the ring by the Fiend, and the Fiend was ripping out hair seemingly from Bryan's head. And we haven't heard or seen Bryan since then. We haven't heard from him. We haven't seen Bryan, so we don't know what he looks like, what happened to Daniel Bryan. I assumed that we would see him resurface on the show. I think a lot of people thought that to build to a rematch of the TLC pay-per-view. That is not happening. Instead, we are getting The Fiend versus The Miz for the Universal Championship of the pay-per-view. No stipulation, nor should there be. The match, the feud literally just started. Now, granted, we've seen Miz and The Fiend and Bryan all interact with each other over the past month, but there is absolutely no reason for this match to have any sort of stipulation, which I feel like is the biggest issue with the TLC pay-per-view this year. Now, I don't want to sit here and shit on the TLC concept. I mean, I also don't want to be a hypocrite, because I can't say to you, oh, the Hell in a Cell show is overdone, get rid of it, but keep the TLC show. I can't say, oh, it's bad to have the TLC show once a year at the same time every year, but not the TLC pay-per-view. It's fine to have TLC, but not Hell in a Cell. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying historically the TLC shows, maybe it's because they're in December or they just have better matches. I don't know. The TLC shows in recent years have been far better than the Hell in a Cell pay-per-views. I have not seen one above average Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. In the 10 years that we've had it, not a single TLC show has stood out as special in my opinion. The TLC, or did I say TLC? I meant Hell in a Cell. TLC, on the other hand, I think has been very good by and large. I've rewatched many installments of TLC over the years. I rewatched the 2010 installment a few weeks ago, about a week or so, I think at this point. About a week or so ago. I watched the 2010 installment back, which was a really good show. The 2011 show I thought was great. It was one of their best shows of the year that year. The 2012 show had the first ever WWE pay-per-view at the Barclays Center. The first ever WWE show in general at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn was a great show too. 2013 was The 2014 one was slightly better, but still not, great. The 2015 show wasn't amazing, but I was there for that one. I enjoyed that event for what it was. TLC 2016 is still one of my favorite pay-per-views to this day. That was a great show. TLC 2017 was fine. Last year's TLC, I don't really remember a lot about it, which is funny just because it happened a year ago. I think it was a good show. But anyway, because I remember we had that Asuka Charlotte Becky main event, which I remember being very, very good. The rest of the show, I don't really remember. This year's show has zero buzz whatsoever. The funny thing is that, before we go any further here, we have three major shows next weekend. We have Ring of Honor Final Battle, which is supposed to be their biggest pay-per-view of the year, supposedly. The NWA Into the Fire pay-per-view on Saturday, and then WWE TLC on Sunday. Of those three shows, the NWA has done a better job building up their Into the Fire pay-per-view and getting me excited for it than Ring of Honor and WWE combined. That's pathetic. That is pathetic. Ring of Honor just has no buzz in general, and WWE has just done nothing to get people excited for this event that's happening in literally 8 days. 8 days until this pay-per-view, and no one could give two shits about the card that we currently have set in stone for that show. Anyway, so the Miz and Wyatt thing, why would it be given a stipulation? The whole gimmick of TLC is for there to be, traditionally one TLC match one ladders match, one chairs match, and one, did I say tables already? One ladder match. One ladder, tables, chairs, and one TLC match. One of everything. At least one of everything. Like the 2010 installment had like two of everything, kind of, which was kind of cool for that year. Other than that, we really haven't seen a whole lot of that in the last number of years. But it was a good idea then. This year, I mean, it seems like every year, every match that we see inside TLC gets less and less deserving of the stipulation. Like last year, we had Becky, Charlotte, and Asuka, which was kind of cool, actually. I can't shit on that. This year, it's Roman Reigns versus Baron Corbin. Who gives a fuck? Who would give a shit about that being a TLC match? And I completely agree with Bubba Ray Dudley on Twitter. Bully Ray had tweeted out last night, the TLC match should be for a championship. The only exception to that, which I'll accept, was the Shield versus Ryback and Team Hell No match, which probably also should not have been a TLC match, mind you, but it's still one of the best matches from 2012. So I can't say, I mean that's probably another example of a match that should not have been a TLC match. And it was also not for anything on the line. But I understand why it wasn't a TLC match because, whatever. I mean, I understand why it was because they had to fill in for the Punk and Ryback match, which was supposed to be TLC. I get it. But anyway, though, aside from that, I can't think of one TLC match that was not for a championship that was really deserving of the stipulation. Why would this need a TLC match stipulation? I'm not saying Wyatt and Miz deserve it. No one deserves it. No match on that card that we're probably going to get at that show is deserving of that stipulation. I guess I'm not even sure if it's better than, at least Becky and Charlotte versus the Kabuki Warriors would have made sense because Charlotte, Becky, and Asuka were in the first ever women's TLC match a year ago. So honestly, that would have made more sense. Assuming they're even still going in that direction, which they were rumored to be a couple of weeks ago. And they probably still are, but even then, who cares? Wyatt and Miz, it should be a decent match. I thought Bryan and The Fiend at Survivor Series was actually a lot better than I thought. Not better than I thought it would be, but it was a good match. It was just far better than any of those Rollins matches from Hell in a Cell and Crown Jewel. Or not Crown Jewel. Yeah, it was Crown Jewel. Crown Jewel and Hell in a Cell, which were fucking terrible. Absolutely awful. Miz and The Fiend might be solid too. I can't possibly take them as seriously as a threat to that championship. But at least they're trying. I would assume they're saving Daniel Bryan for a future episode. I assume that he's going to be kept off TV until after TLC. Maybe he comes back at the show and costs them the championship and goes back to being a heel. Who knows? I don't know. He just went back to doing the yes thing, so I would assume not. But it will be interesting to see what he looks like when he gets back to SmackDown, back to the blue brand. It would be cool to see him go back to his 2011, 2012 look, where he had not the completely shaved head, but really, really like a buzz cut type of thing, and he had the long beard. Maybe not as long as it is now, but a shorter beard. I thought that was a good look for him. It was very reminiscent of his American Dragon days in Ring of Honor. I guess we won't find out until after TLC, which is good. I'm glad they're not rushing to Bryan and Wyatt, part 2 just yet. They could be saving that for Royal Rumble. They could very well be doing a triple threat match at the Royal Rumble between Miz, Bryan, and The Fiend. Just to kill time before WrestleMania. We do not know. But I like the idea of Miz and Wyatt. They're adding more fuel to the fire. Although they don't have much time until the pay-per-view. They kind of built it up this week on the show by having, Bray Wyatt, hold up a picture of Miz's family, himself, Maurice, and his two baby girls. I think he has 2 girls now. I know there's Monroe Sky. I think he had a second child that was also a girl. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, earlier this year, I think. So they're adding some last-minute fire to the feud, which is nice. Wasn't a great segment. Then we saw Bray Wyatt actually for the first time in the flesh, not The Fiend, Bray Wyatt himself in the Mr. Rogers-like gear, backstage lay out The Miz with his sister Abigail. He wasn't acting over the top and friendly as he would on the Firefly Funhouse, but it was cool to see him outside of the Fiend gear for once in the flesh and blood. But this was good. It wasn't great. Probably one of the better things on the entire show. But it did set in stone I was going to say the TLC main event, but it probably won't be. The Fiend versus The Miz for the Universal Championship. We then had Alexa Bliss return to in-ring action for the first time. She was actually in action at Starrcade, but her first one-on-one match in many months. Taking on Mandy Rose. The match was okay. They kind of botched some spots. Wasn't a great match at all. But it was decent for the time given. Alexa Bliss went over, which made sense. She just came back a week ago. this was fine. I assume it's setting up Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross versus Fire and Desire next week on the show. We also had, okay, so this is where the show really went off the rails. We had Drake Maverick backstage hitting on Dana Brooke. Now, nothing about this shit makes any sense in the slightest. I'm not saying that Drake Maverick isn't capable of hitting on Dana Brooke, but the guy's married. We know he's married because they just told us for 6 fucking months that the guy's married, and that whole 24/7 nonsense, that championship shit with R-Truth, which was entertaining for a while, jumped the shark after a certain point, but they were doing that for quite a bit. And the whole point was that Drake Maverick couldn't get laid by his wife. He couldn't get laid by his wife because he could never hold the 24/7 championship for more than a week. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Now he's on SmackDown. Apparently he's single, even though he's not. He's still married to Renee Michelle. Obviously in reality, but also in storyline, so I'm not really sure why he's hitting on Dana Brooke. I guess he's a fucking cheater now. So he's hitting on Dana Brooke, who wants no part of it, who also brought up in this same segment, she brought up that she is going on a dinner date with Batista. The animal himself is back in WWE, sort of not really, in a date with Dana Brooke. Now, if that was to culminate in some sort of storyline with Batista coming back and beating the shit out of Drake, maybe all of this would be worth it. But even then, probably not, because we know Batista won't wrestle again. So it's not like he's coming back for another match. Not to say he went off on the highest of notes, but he went off on the way that he wanted to. He went off on the note that he wanted to in the match with Triple H at WrestleMania 35. He's very adamant about keeping that retirement. It's only been 6 or 7 or 8 months. He's not coming back for another match. Probably ever again. Then again, we said the same thing about Shawn Michaels. You never know. But for him to come back for a match with Drake Maverick or Elias, I don't think anyone really cares about that. I doubt we do see Batista come back in any form or fashion anytime soon. The guy's busy. He's filming movies. He'd rather be doing anything else. But you never know. They're bringing him up in storyline for a reason. Maybe just because they've acknowledged the Dana Brooke and Batista thing on like WWE's Twitter and on the bump and shit like that. So they kind of feel obligated to acknowledge it. But the weird thing about this is not only that Drake Maverick is married, Dana Brooke is going out on a date with Batista. So not that she was flirting with Elias here, who came to her aid, and they beat up Drake Maverick in the ring, which was so fucking dumb. The thing jumped the shark once he started spanking Drake Maverick. Come the fuck on. This is absolute nonsense. It's bullshit. It's terrible TV. No thank you. But what also didn't make sense about this was that, again, not that Dana Brooke was like flirting with Elias, but she was very touchy-feely with Elias, and she's supposed to be going out on a date with the animal in a couple days. So again, if Batista's coming back and he's going to beat the shit out of these two, then maybe it would be worth it. But even then, I'm not even sure that it is, because this is just a complete waste of time. The funny thing about this is that overall, it looks like they're turning Elias face again. I was very high on the idea when they did it about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, actually. They turned him face for that feud with Bobby Lashley, which went nowhere. And then he turned heel right back afterward because he lost a bunch of matches to Baron Corbin, and that was it. And they turned him back into a heel in time for the Rumble, which was a complete fucking waste because the guy was actually getting over as a babyface, and he very well may now too. But I don't know, like, why would... I don't know. It's very inconsistent, so we'll see where this goes. I'm not exactly excited to find out, but this whole Elias, Drake Maverick, Dana Brooke nonsense, I can't honestly sit here and tell you I give a shit about this shit. It's terrible. It's just terrible. Easily the worst thing from the show. We then had a fatal 4-way elimination tag team match with the winners advancing to TLC to face the New Day for the SmackDown tag team titles. Speaking of the New Day, they were on commentary for this fatal 4-way match, they were very entertaining, kind of busting Corey Graves' balls, which was hilarious. Unfortunately, they did not bring up Mauro Ranallo and the fact that he bullied Mauro. Although Big E was kind of giving him that death stare at a certain point, he kind of made it seem like, hey, I know what you said to Mauro, you better cut the shit before I beat the fuck out of you kind of look, you know? But other than that, they made no mention of Mauro Ranallo and the beef that he had with Corey Graves a couple of weeks ago. So in this match, we had the Lucha House Party, who were eliminated first. We then had Heavy Machinery get eliminated, so it came down to Mustafa Ali and Chad Gable, not that other name, Chad Gable and Mustafa Ali, and the Revival. This was good. I honestly enjoyed this for what it was. The tag team division really right now in the whole, on any brand, honestly, including NXT, is not great. It could absolutely be better. I like the Revival, I like the New Day, but I feel like we've seen this match so many fucking times in the last 3 or 4 months. They've been feuding literally since the Kofi Orton feud in July or August. So to go back to it again, their last match ended on a no contest after the Undisputed Era interfered on that one episode of SmackDown before Survivor Series. They did the rematch, although they didn't really have to because the Revival, there was no more rematches in WWE anymore. There's no automatic championship rematch clauses. So I'm not really sure why they did the rematch. It makes more sense to have the Revival earn another shot like they did here. So maybe they wrap up the rivalry there at the pay-per-view by having the New Day win decisively once and for all. But if the Revival win back the championships again, then I just don't care. Like, to put the belts in the Revival in the first place, only to have them drop the belts right back to the New Day less than 2 months later was a complete waste of the Revival. They've held 3 tag team titles this year. The Raw tag team titles twice, and now the SmackDown tag team titles once. None of those reigns were memorable at all. I could not tell you one memorable championship title defense they had on TV whatsoever. I mean, they had a few maybe with Ricochet and Alistair, and then one with the Usos a couple months ago. But other than that, I mean, they're really just putting championships on these guys left and right just to convince them to stay. But they won't. I mean, again, I said the same thing about Gallows and Anderson, and they did, but that was a bit different. They're associated with AJ. They have something going for them right now. These guys, not really. The Revival, they just keep winning meaningless tag team titles. They had a thing going with Orton, and then they obviously got separated. They got put on separate shows because why give the fans what they want? Again, as a match, I thought this was good, but the Revival and New Day, again, honestly, if there's any match deserving of a stipulation on that TLC card, it would be this one because the feud's been going on for so long now. They could do a ladder match. But the thing is that they ruled that out when the Revival said, we're going to beat you in a traditional tag team match. It's like, okay, so I guess there's no ladder match. But if there's any match that should be, a TLC match or a ladder match, it would be this one. The New Day actually had an amazing ladder match for those tag titles 4 years ago, the TLC that I was at in Boston, with them, not the Lucha House Party, the fucking Lucha Dragons, another Lucha tag team. The Lucha Dragons and the Usos, which was a great match. It was an amazing triple threat tag team ladder match. I don't know if they've been in any ladder matches since. I don't think so, as far as I can remember. But this would be a good match to do in a ladder match, but it doesn't really sound like they're going in that direction. We then had Lacey Evans beat some random woman. Some random woman. I forgot what her name was. I'm looking at the WWE.com results right now. I'm not exactly sure who it was supposed to be, what her actual name was. I'm on the WWE.com result thing. There's not even a name for the woman. They didn't even put the name of the woman on here, which is kind of funny. But it doesn't really matter. She beat some random jobber with the woman's right, walked to the back. Or no, Sasha came out to confront Lacey. They talked shit. Lacey was going to punch her again. Sasha got scared and sat on her ass. So Lacey walked off and got ambushed from behind by Bayley. So good stuff here. Lacey, I guess, is officially a babyface. She was shown, extending her hand to a member of the WWE Universe who kissed her hand. And usually she'll pull the hand away right before they're about to kiss it, but she did not this time. So I guess she's a good guy. Huzzah! I will say this, though. If she does not, I guess she doesn't have a match attributed to the troops. They taped it yesterday. I'm not sure how, because SmackDown was yesterday, maybe earlier on in the day. I think it was on Thursday. I don't remember what day it was, but they filmed it in the last couple days. Lacey, I guess, does not have a match on the show. The only matches on the show involve Raw wrestlers, but Lacey, I saw, was on the show in some form or fashion, which only makes sense. She's a former Marine. She kind of has to sort of be on the show. If you really want to turn her face, she's got to be on the show. It's something different. Bayley and Lacey, something different for right now, which I can appreciate. We'll see if they put the championship on or at the pay-per-view. Probably not. I wouldn't do it right now. Bayley's doing well as a heel, so I wouldn't really take the championship off of her at this point in time. But there was that. And then we had the main event just like that. The show was almost over. We had Roman Reigns in the main event taking on Dolph Ziggler, a match I feel like we've seen a bunch of times before. And not to say it was a bad match, but I can't bring myself to care about a main event with Dolph fucking Ziggler because the guy's not going to win. The match was exactly what you would expect it to be. Very standard, very ho-hum stuff. Predictable, boring. Robert Roode was not on the show. We were told that he was, as a result of the attack that he suffered at the hands of Roman Reigns last week, he's not been cleared to compete. He's out of action for the foreseeable future, so he's gone for right now. Dolph Ziggler stepped up to face Roman, and he lost. The match went 17 minutes. Are you fucking kidding me? Like I said at the start of this review, I almost fell asleep watching this shit. This was so fucking boring. We had King Corbin attempt to interfere, and even he could not allow Dolph Ziggler to win this match. Not even he could help him win. So Ziggler loses, but that's not all. Roman gets attacked by Dolph and King Corbin and the people that carried King Corbin's throne of the ring. And then they just beat the shit out of him. They tie him up to the turnbuckle post, and they pour dog food on him. Yeah, they poured dog food on Roman Reigns. What the fuck was I watching? Is this some sort of fetish with Vince McMahon where he gets off and watching people get, drowned in dog food? What the fuck was this? I know they're doing the whole big dog thing, which you would think they would have abandoned after 1 week because it didn't work the first time, yet they've been doing it every week since then. It's bullshit. The only thing I will say that's good about this feud with Roman and Baron is that they're not having the rumored dog collar match of the pay-per-view. That is the only thing I can say that's good about this pay-per-view, about this feud. The TLC match stipulation isn't much better. Roman's had a bunch of TLC matches, some good, some not so good. The Sheamus one I thought was fucking boring as shit, and I was there for it. I could not give two shits about that TLC match. The one that he was in with the Shield debut, his first ever match in WWE in the main roster, was in a TLC match. It was amazing. It's not really Roman's fault. It's really more a matter of the feuds. This Baron Corbin feud reminds me of that Sheamus feud. It fucking sucks. No one cares. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. This is bad. The match was boring. The post-match stuff was stupid. And seemingly, I would assume they are main eventing that TLC pay-per-view because Brock Lesnar doesn't want to show up for work. He's taking the holidays off. He won't be back until at least January. So Brock will not be defending the WWE Championship on that show. We have Bray Wyatt and The Miz, but unless The Miz somehow upsets The Fiend, which he won't, and nor should he, that match is not going on last either. And that's really it. I mean, I guess, again, if they put Charlotte and Becky versus the Kabuki Warriors in the main event as a TLC match, it could work, but we've already been told that it probably won't be because they're not going to likely have two TLC matches on the same show. If anything, that would be a ladder match, which, I would take that in the main event because I know it would be a better match than this crop of shit. It's just fucking bad. It's just bad. And the thing is, I like Roman. I really like King Corbin. They just don't have good chemistry together at all. We knew that already because they had a few matches last year, earlier this year, and none of them were ever any good. None of them. None of them. They were all boring as shit. So I guess they just really have nothing else for Roman right now before he likely goes for the championship again in the near future. It's really just another win for the guy to kind of help him build towards winning back the Universal Championship at some point. But this was just shit. I just don't care about this feud at all. If this is the shit, I mean, I'm very interested to see the rating for this show. Now, I guess the rating will be up. I had seen somewhere the viewership was up, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, last week's show was the Black Friday show. Many people were out shopping, doing other shit. It was a holiday show. I get why the rating would be down. I could see why the rating would be up this week. But if they continue to build around this Roman and Baron Corbin bullshit, I would not be shocked to see the rating decrease because the show has been even worse than it was before it moved to Fox. The show is doing similar ratings to what it was doing on USA, and it's on Fox now. That's not good. If they do worse ratings than they were doing on USA, that is not a good sign, which is honestly almost inevitable that they could be doing as bad of ratings as they were on USA. As terrible as the ratings were then, I mean, they weren't terrible, but they weren't what they should have been. They could be back down to that level before long if they continue to book shit like this and promote Roman and Dolph as the sole featured match on the show. Why would anyone tune into SmackDown if the main event is going to be Roman Reigns versus Dolph Ziggler for the upteenth time? Or Roman versus Baron Corbin again? No shit's given. So I did not think this was a good show at all. The Fatal 4-Way Tag Team Elimination match was fun at points. It's not exactly must-see, but I thought it was good. And the opening stuff with Miz and Wyatt was fine. The only saving grace of the show is the fact that they built towards multiple matches for the TLC pay-per-view next week. And I forgot, I'm looking through the .com results right now. I forgot to say that Mandy Rose ripped off Alexa Bliss's eyelashes, which I forgot to mention because it was so dumb because she ripped off the eyelashes. And Michael Cole and Corey were like all squeamish on commentary, like, oh, could you imagine how much that must hurt? Now, I'm not a girl, but they're clearly fake eyelashes. And maybe that's what, maybe they implied that with their commentary. They didn't say that. Clearly, she wasn't ripping her real eyelashes out. No shit. It was very obvious as soon as Mandy pulled them out that they were fake. But even then, they probably just, I asked Alexis while we were watching the show, I'm like, does that really hurt? And she goes, no, it just tickles when you take off fake eyelashes. So, I mean, just the fact that we're acting like it was the worst thing that ever happened to the girl was just fucking dumb to me. I forgot to mention that. That was also pretty stupid. But yeah, that was SmackDown. That was SmackDown for December 6th, 2019. Thank you guys for checking out my review. Very much appreciate it. All near 30 minutes of it. We're 30 minutes in here, so we'll wind it down here. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, and share the video. All that stuff greatly appreciated. And subscribe to the channel. Like I said earlier, there probably will not be any SmackDown reviews for the foreseeable future here on the channel, just because next week I will not be watching the show live. I'll be watching the Ring of Honor Final Battle pay-per-view. And hey, maybe if I care that little about Ring of Honor, I won't watch the show live, but it is their biggest pay-per-view of the year, so I'll give it a shot. I probably will not be watching SmackDown until early Saturday, so unless I have some last-minute time on Saturday morning to review the show, there will very likely not be a SmackDown audio review next week or the week after, as I'm going to see Star Wars in Massachusetts with my old roommate from college and Alexis, so and my brother. It's a big party. But yeah, maybe the week after that for the final episode of 2019, which would be on December 27th, I want to say. Maybe then, even then, I feel like it's going to be a throwaway show, so who gives a shit, But yeah, you can always check out my written reviews of the show. Don't forget, on nextairwrestling.net, if I don't do an audio review, I always do the written reviews. I have not missed a written review of SmackDown in like fucking 10 years. So check them all out right now on nextairwrestling.net. As always, guys, thank you for checking out the video. Very much appreciate it. Have a great rest of your weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.